Xi Jinping is done. His military parade masks a collapsing economy. The sounds of marching boots echo through Tiananmen Square as thousands of Chinese soldiers move in perfect synchronization. But beneath this carefully choreographed display of power lies a desperate attempt to distract from an economic reality that threatens to unravel Xi Jinping's grip on China. While the world watched, hypnotized by the military spectacle featuring Putin and Kim Jong-un, the numbers behind China's economy tell a story of deflation, collapsing consumer spending, and a real estate crisis that refuses to end. Subscribe now and tell us in the comments, do you think military displays can truly mask economic failures? Let's dive deep into the 4 critical aspects that reveal how Xi Jinping's latest parade serves as a smokescreen for China's most serious economic challenges since the Cultural Revolution. The September 3, 2025 Victory Day Parade wasn't just another military display, it was Xi Jinping's most expensive gamble yet. With over 12,000 troops marching through Beijing and an estimated cost exceeding 36 billion yuan, this spectacle consumed nearly 1.5% of China's official defense budget. The timing couldn't have been more telling. As China's GDP growth continues to fall short of official targets and deflation grips the economy with an iron fist, Xi chose to spend billions on a show designed to project strength while his nation struggles with fundamental economic weaknesses. The parade featured China's most advanced military hardware, from 4th-generation tanks to carrier-based aircraft, all rolled out before an international audience that included Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. But this display of military sophistication contrasts sharply with the reality facing ordinary Chinese citizens. Consumer spending has plummeted to levels not seen since the early 2000s, hovering around 40% of GDP, while advanced economies typically see consumption rates of 60% or higher. This gap reveals the fundamental imbalance in China's economic model. Behind the fanfare of helicopters carrying banners proclaiming, "Justice shall prevail, and peace shall prevail," a different story was unfolding in China's economic data. The Consumer Price Index had dropped 0.4% year-over-year in August 2025, while producer prices for industrial products fell by a staggering 2.9%. These numbers don't lie, and they paint a picture of an economy caught in what economists increasingly describe as a deflationary death spiral. The real estate sector, once the engine of China's growth, continues its relentless collapse. Property investments have fallen dramatically, leaving millions of unfinished apartments and countless developers drowning in debt. Local government revenues, heavily dependent on land sales, have evaporated, forcing provincial authorities to cut essential services. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping spent enough money on his military parade to fund dozens of infrastructure projects that could have provided real economic stimulus. The contrast becomes even more stark when examining the international attendance at the parade. Vladimir Putin's presence alongside Kim Jong-un sent a clear message about China's shifting alliances, but it also revealed Xi's growing isolation from Western economic partners. As trade tensions persist and foreign investment continues to decline, China finds itself increasingly dependent on partnerships with economies that can't provide the technological transfer and market access that Chinese growth desperately needs. Manufacturing data from 2025 tells an equally troubling story. Industrial output experienced its worst performance of the year in August, with factory production declining across multiple sectors. Export growth, while still positive, has slowed considerably as global demand weakens and other countries diversify their supply chains away from China. The much-vaunted Belt and Road Initiative has produced mixed results at best, with many partner countries struggling to repay Chinese loans and several projects abandoned entirely. Youth unemployment in China has reached crisis levels, with recent graduates facing an increasingly bleak job market. The government has even stopped publishing detailed youth unemployment statistics, a move that speaks volumes about the severity of the situation. Instead of addressing these fundamental challenges, Xi chose to showcase military might in a parade that cost more than many small cities' annual budgets. The financial sector shows similar signs of strain. Banks are grappling with a mounting pile of non-performing loans, particularly in the real estate sector. Despite government intervention and repeated bailouts, the banking system remains vulnerable to shocks. Corporate debt has reached unsustainable levels, with many state-owned enterprises surviving only through continuous government support. Private sector confidence has evaporated, leading to reduced investment and innovation. Currency pressures add another layer of complexity to China's economic challenges. The yuan has faced significant downward pressure throughout 2025, forcing the People's Bank of China to intervene repeatedly in foreign exchange markets. Capital outflows have accelerated as wealthy Chinese seek to move assets abroad, recognizing the warning signs of economic instability. The central bank's foreign exchange reserves, while still substantial, have been declining steadily. The demographic time bomb ticking beneath China's economy makes all these problems worse. An aging population means fewer workers supporting more retirees, while the decades-long one-child policy has created a demographic cliff that will constrain growth for generations. Healthcare and pension costs are exploding just as the working-age population begins to shrink. These structural challenges require immediate attention, not expensive military displays. Regional disparities within China have widened dramatically. While coastal cities struggle with deflation and overcapacity, interior provinces face even more severe challenges. Rural areas have been largely left behind as urbanization slowed, and agricultural modernization failed to create sufficient employment. The parade in Beijing showcased China's technological achievements, but it couldn't hide the reality that millions of Chinese citizens are experiencing declining living standards. Innovation and technological development, once bright spots in China's economy, have also shown signs of stagnation. Heavy government intervention in technology sectors has stifled entrepreneurship, while international sanctions and export controls have limited access to critical components and software. The much-publicized semiconductor push has achieved limited success, leaving China vulnerable to supply chain disruptions. Environmental costs continue to mount as economic pressures lead to shortcuts in environmental protection. Air quality improvements have stalled, water pollution remains widespread, and soil contamination affects agricultural productivity. The transition to renewable energy, while impressive in scale, has created new forms of industrial overcapacity and waste. These environmental challenges represent hidden economic costs that will burden future generations. The education system reflects broader economic problems. Universities are producing graduates with skills that don't match market demands, while vocational training remains underdeveloped. Student debt is rising, and many young people are questioning whether higher education provides value in an increasingly constrained job market. The parade celebrated military technology, but it couldn't address the fundamental mismatch between educational outcomes and economic needs. Social tensions have increased as economic inequality widens. The gap between urban and rural incomes continues to grow, while social mobility has decreased significantly. Healthcare costs consume an ever larger share of household incomes, and educational expenses burden middle-class families. These pressures create social instability that no amount of military display can resolve. International economic relationships have deteriorated as China's economic model increasingly conflicts with global trade norms. Accusations of unfair competition, technology theft, and market manipulation have damaged China's reputation among trading partners. The parade featuring Putin and Kim Jong-un reinforced perceptions that China is aligning with authoritarian regimes rather than addressing legitimate economic concerns raised by democratic nations. As the last tanks rolled through Tiananmen Square and the final formations of soldiers disappeared from view, the fundamental questions about China's economic future remained unanswered. Xi Jinping's spectacular military parade may have impressed international observers and provided temporary pride for Chinese citizens, but it did nothing to address the deflation gripping the economy, the collapsing real estate sector, or the mounting debt that threatens financial stability. The parade's cost of 36 billion yuan could have funded significant economic reforms, infrastructure improvements, or social programs that would have provided real benefits to Chinese citizens. Instead, Xi chose spectacle over substance, prioritizing image over economic reality. This decision reveals the extent to which China's leadership has become disconnected from the genuine challenges facing their nation. The presence of international observers like Putin and Kim Jong-un at the parade signals China's growing isolation from the global economic mainstream. While China showcases military hardware, other nations are building technological partnerships, developing sustainable economies, and creating opportunities for their citizens. The contrast couldn't be more stark between China's militaristic display and the economic dynamism visible in other Asian economies. The ultimate question isn't whether Xi Jinping's military parade was impressive, it certainly was. The question is whether such displays can substitute for effective economic governance. The evidence from China's struggling economy suggests they cannot. Real strength comes from economic resilience, social stability, and citizen prosperity, not from military parades that consume resources desperately needed elsewhere. As deflation continues, unemployment rises, and social tensions mount, Xi Jinping's military parade begins to look less like a display of strength and more like a desperate attempt to distract from fundamental failures of economic leadership. The marching soldiers and advanced weapons cannot mask the reality that China's economic model is failing its people.